The Lun and the Sag family were best of friends. Their castles bordered each other as they shared a familiar border and were neighbors. They were one of the most powerful families in the Chai kingdom because they commanded the military, whose heads were the Lord Generals. Mr. Loon had a girl who was just 3 years old. She was Yuki. As small as Yuki was, she was jovial, chalant, and made no excuse for formalities. She was also bold and didn't give in to nonsense. At her age, she addressed her elders by their names. Many of the people around that area said she was spoiled, and maybe it was because she was the Lord Commander's daughter. At that age, she would make sure to tour the lands, and no matter the needs of the people, she would know them. This was necessary for her to know the needs of the common people. She hoped to visit the emperor one day, with expectations to tell him, so he could attend to these needs. Yuki had an amazing voice and loved to sing. Her voice, at a young age, was the only thing people delighted in. Her voice captivated many people who fell in love with her. She was a delight because of her voice. Yuki was 4 years old when Mrs. Sag gave birth to a boy, whom they named Yai. From then on, Yuki was told that she was going to be married to the boy to help bolster their families. Yuki wasn't yet open to the idea and excitement of marriage, and gave no thought to it. Yuki and Yai were childhood friends. Their parents were proud of them because they were betrothed to each other. As they both grew, Yai immediately began to adore Yuki. He loved her. He worshipped the ground on which she trod her feet. He was fascinated by her. He completely adored Yuki and wanted to know her more. He took her as a challenge, and he wanted to be like her. He saw her as brave and audacious. He wanted to be a man worthy of her. At a young age, Yai started learning combat and military tactics. He would soon take over from his father and command the Sag army. He had a task ahead of him, heavy and big shoes to fill, and he had to grow up right to responsibility. He delved time to play with Yuki, had time for himself, study, learn from his father, as well as practice. Yai and Yuki were fully grown. Yai's father had already begun taking him to the borders to firsthand experience war and know what it's like to command an army. When he would return, he would be celebrated for his benevolence and bravery at the borders. Yai had grown up to be a courageous man, someone who wasn't afraid to be up to the task, and everyone around the region loved him. Not to say Yuki, who always commanded drama and attention wherever she went. She was the only child and couldn't go to work, let alone command an army. Unlike other children who would feel inferior since they had big shoes to fill, Yuki couldn't care less. She was a lady. She thought of, talked, and acted like a lady, and nonetheless was the gossip of her vicinity. Ever since Yuki and Yai were kids, they had always played like friends, sort of each other as friends, and talked as friends. But Mr. Sag and Mr. Loon now wanted their children to get married in order to merge the family and their army and status. They would indeed be the greatest in the kingdom, and no one would dare to challenge them. Now it was time for marriage. Yai suddenly began to portray his romantic feelings for Yuki, making her extremely uncomfortable. Yes, they were friends, and they were set to be married. But Yuki had not seen Yai in a romantic way before, and had not thought about it. Yai continued talking about their marriage and pestering Yuki, who suggested that things go too far in Yuki's mind. Yai would soon find another girl and leave her alone. Since it's the way things work, she wouldn't fall for Yai. Nonetheless, she had to stop this marriage, and the only way was to look for another girl who would capture Yai's heart. The talks of their marriage started heating up from their family members, and everyone was intrigued. Since Yai was once again leading the army to the borders to security turns, there was no way Yai would find the love of his life in the borders, since it is so scarce of people, let alone women. Yuki had to start making preparations on finding and matching him with different possible futures, which were damsels. He had countlessly told him that very soon he would find a love of his life, and he would see someone and be astounded by her, and he would leave her alone for the latter. But Yai would constantly remind her that his heart is for her. He had great expectations of this wedding and their union, and anytime he shares it with Yuki, it will send chisels down her spine, making her uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. He would always share with her that once they get married, himself, his heart, and everything he has will belong to her, and she would belong to him as well, so she can use him however she wants. He tells her how he can't wait for her to become the mother of his children, and his dearly beloved wife, the one to stay by his side. though Yai had now gone to the borders to defend it. Yuki was lonely and miserable, but she had a task at hand, which was finding possible suitors for Yai. She began touring around the city looking for girls who would be worthy enough to own Yai's heart. Many girls in the city were in love with Yai. He was the town's heartthrob, so it would be easy and not hard to find anyone or people who would love to marry him. The more difficult task was finding a possible suitor, and the one that Yai would accept into his heart. Yuki found many girls as suitors for Yai, but then she had to wait for Yai to return so she could show them to him. The days passed with effortless waiting, and Yai finally returned from the border. He was celebrated by the town for taking the watch surveillance. When he returned, he immediately rushed to Yuki, who was endlessly waiting for him. They missed each other. When he saw her, he ran to her and hugged her, but Yuki pretended as if she didn't miss him as well. Now that Yai was back, it could now be time to get married, and preparations had to be made at the earliest. But Yuki reminded Yai how he would abandon her if they got married. Even though Yai refuted her claims, Yuki went on to say that she had found wonderful suitors for Yai to select from. He could go out with anyone he chooses, get to know them, and then at a long frame, they could fall in love. Yai rejected her suggestion, saying that he loves her and only her, and he will be with her, and has eyes for no other woman or lady in the city but her. He told Yuki to drop the topic and get preparing for the wedding. Yuki knew that the only thing she had to do now was to make Yai hate her so he could leave her before they get married. Nonetheless, she still planned on secretly setting him up with one of those beautiful ladies she had chosen him for and see how he takes on the heat. Their parents send them on the market to buy things for their wedding. Then Yuki made different and various plans in place at the moment. As they went, Yuki began to feverishly talk, mainly to the marketers, and was buying things extravagantly, both the ones they needed and the ones that they didn't need. She was buying this excessively. One of her maids reprimanded her that her husband-to-be won't like her if she continues buying things like this, but she told her to keep me. If he doesn't like it, then he should abandon her. The servants stood him to stop giving her money and stop letting her spend too much, but he rejected. Dear, please. Yuki overheard their conversations and asked him if anything is wrong with her spending. Yai just gazed at her in awe and love. His eyes were fixated, and his lips slightly opened. He smiled blatantly and told her that she should make sure she buys everything that she wants, whatever she wants. He told her that very soon they will get married, and his money as well as himself would be at her disposal and whim, and that she would use it however she pleases. He continued drooling at her. She was moved when she heard this. Knowing that Yai meant every bit of what he said, the servants reprimanded him, saying he was behaving badly. But Yuki acted as if she wasn't perturbed by this. Knowing that this plan didn't work, she had to move to the next plan. They went to the next shop of a shaman, a fortune teller who Yuki had already paid to read their fortune for them. She convinced the guy that she wanted to know the future of their marriage, so he agreed. The shaman looked at their palms after Yuki had already told him what to say. He told them that they can't be together, and that if they are together, Yai will fall in battle. The shaman said that Yai would be defeated in battle because of Yuki, and he would die. So, they would not be together. Yuki began to act scared, saying she didn't want Yai to die and that she had cancelled the wedding. But Yai didn't buy her words. He said the shaman was lying and they should leave. No matter how hard Yuki tried to console Yai, he did not believe, and insisted they should leave. As they were about to leave, the shaman held Yuki's hand, giving a serious expression. He said what he said was true, and they would love another. He said every word he said was true, and they should take it seriously. Then he let go of her hand and allowed her to leave. Yuki was sure that her second plan had failed, but she was relentless and had to make sure the third one would not fail. She had to set up Yai with a lady who would be suitable for him. Yai called Yuki after they had returned home. He had a surprise for her at night. It was the festival in their town, and he wanted to spend it with her and surprise her. Yuki thought this would be the perfect opportunity to strike. He had called the girl he was going to set Yai up with. The lady was excited to see Yai, so Yuki sent her to meet Yai at one place and watched from afar. The lady went to see Yai, who at first thought it was Yuki. When he realized it was not Yuki, he was shocked and asked the girl what she was doing there. He denied ever summoning her and asked for Yuki, implying there must be a mistake. The lady told him she had always wanted to see him and how handsome he was. She had been crushing on him for a long time. She professed her love for him and wanted to marry him, which made Yai extremely uncomfortable. She suggested they go on dates and get to know each other to see how it ends. Yai politely declined, saying he was engaged and faithful to Yuki only. Yuki emerged disappointed and told Yai to give the lady a chance. Yai immediately ran to her, saying he didn't know the lady at all, and that he was faithful to Yuki only. He begged her not to misunderstand him and assured her of his loyalty. Yuki was disappointed, but agreed for the lady to go. Yes, he said he wanted to show her something. He led her to the surprise for her, telling her that when they get married, he can be surprising her like this every day of their life. It was romantic, and that was what disappointed her, the fact that she was actually falling for it, as well as for him. He said he always wanted to remain in her good books and her good side, and he would always pamper her, never treat her wrong. He would always love her and be loyal to her. He said that he loves her character and who she would become, how scornfully she treats people, and he wants her to be herself. He isn't willing for her to change. Now, unknowingly, Yuki begins to have a soft spot for Yai as he finally swept her off her feet. He is willing to prove and show off his undying devotion and love to her in the coming days. Yai and Yuki spend endless time together preparing for the wedding, putting an effort to be with each other. A new scheme from the palace was that the Max family would be sent to a deployment camp near the borders to solidify the forces and for surveillance, and also to exert control. They were going to be with the Sak family. Once again, Yai would be going to the border and leaving Yuki behind. Though Yai was excited about earning his name, he was sad to leave Yuki behind. Now, the wedding preparations had to come to a pause as Yai and Yuki nonetheless had to spend their last times together for some time. Yai promised to come back to marry Yuki. Yuki was already missing Yai before he left to get her. The Sak and Max armies left to the border camp. Now, Yuki unknowingly began dreaming about Yai. She was missing him terribly. She was unaware of the fact that she was beginning to fall deeply in love with Yai. She would climb onto a tree and wait for Yai to return. Day by day, he sent letters to her. Sometimes she would read them. Sometimes she wouldn't bother to open them. She also sent letters to him, and they sent letters to each other. She sealed them only with a kiss, and this disturbed her maids, who told her that she was now in love with Yai. This shocked her. She didn't want this to happen, but it had happened anyway. She couldn't help it. Thinking of him now excited her, and she couldn't wait at all for him to return from the border. It was Yai's pleasure to be going with Mr. Max and his son, Yeti. They were now literally the most powerful family in the whole kingdom and the most powerful military family in the whole kingdom. Envied by all, Mr. Max was the chief general in command of all the armies in the kingdom, and his army fought with the largest. Also, he was the emperor's favorite, and was close to the emperor's house, next to all the other generals and officials vying for power in the kingdom, including Mr. Sad and Mr. Loon. Unlike his father, Yeti didn't like to show himself very often. The emperor desired him too, and he was to be the emperor's favorite in his vicinity. Yeti was loved by all. He was muscular, well-chiseled, and had an island far away from the castle. It was the ladies' delight to see him when he came out from the stream, very early in the morning, which was his normal routine. He would go in the morning to have a bath by the river. They would see his well-chiseled physique with nothing on. His long hair dripping would immensely excite them and get them in different thoughts which Yeti would not like to entertain. The ladies would witness him entering different inns and would imagine the lady that was with him would be very lucky. Yeti was actually very quiet and calm, but very dangerous. Imagining what the ladies thought, that he was very good in bed. Yet he paid less attention to these rumors. Yai and Yeti over the years had gone to the borders together and also to war. They spent time together and were very excited to go to the border this time. This settled, the deployment comes with the emperor's peace, and after some time settled, they returned and were praised in courts and in the presence of the emperor, who asked Yeti what he wanted. But to everyone's dismay, he said he did not want anything but the emperor's praise and his recognition. Said he wanted to return home. This vexed everyone has caught, but the emperor was pleased with Yeti, who was the son of Max. He allowed yesterday to the princess, who would win the kingdom. The emperor also declared that I would also help you to the princess in sword comebacks. This council was very envious of Yeti and his father. Even the princess was very weary of him. Who was there? To the emperor's hearts. And all sought to do something about them. Yeah. Returned home to see his beloved UK, who had been missing him. This time they hugged each other. Y was aware of the many letters that were sent to him, that you could deeply missed him. He was now back to her, and hoped to marry her. They were so happy. The marriage preparations would now move with haste, so that UK and Ya would get married. Yeah, and you kiss. Spend times alone with each other. There you key to the eye that she was now in love with him, and had hoped that they have a blissful married life. Hearing this excited the eye. He had wanted to hear this for a very long time. In excitement, he moved to plant a luscious kiss on her lips. It was deep, and she loved every moment of it. She faced him to recuperate the impromptu kiss. He had his palm on her cheek and savaged her lips, after which he hugged her, and told her that he loves her as well, and is glad that she loves him too, and that no one was ever going to keep them apart, and that they would be together for the rest of their life. Hearing this gave Yuki tingles. She now wanted to hear more romantically. She's from, yeah, as it excited her. Yeti and Ya began the tutoring lessons with the princess. The council and other generals were envious of Yeti and his father. Ya was simply to begin Yeti's trust. One of the days I came to the tutoring lessons with the prince. UK came with him, and Yeti gazed upon her with lust. He had fallen in love with her and fight, he told the eye. He now likes her and is interested in her. But Ya reprimanded him, telling him that Yuki is his beloved, and they are to be married. He announced his marriage to the cabinet chiefs and the council as they were happy, and congratulated him, but yet he told the eye that since they were not married, he was still interested in UK. This shocked her and everyone throughout the lesson. UK was uncomfortable with the way that Yeti was staring at her. Yeah, I will reminded her from ever following him to the tutoring lessons again. But Yeti was now interested in Yuki, and sought to make her his. This vexed Yai. He was close to the emperor's hearts. In one of the meetings, Mr. Max boasted of his son and his benevolence, and how he was close to the emperor's heart in years, and how his son Yeti would take over him. This brought the council cabinets and all the other lord commanders to alerts. They now saw Yeti and his father as threats and sought to abdicate them. They all started to investigate the Max family, and found some ledgers in the Max family. He discovered that the emperor and Max had secret dealings with allocations that were sent to different armies and deployment camps across the borders. Yeti also noticed something suspicious, and asked his father, who in turn told him that he would know in due time. These ledgers were now sure to implicate the Max family in charges of embezzlements because of the money allocated is not exactly the money given, and you used more. Budget is allocated, but let's budget is actually used. What is the remaining budget used for? But this was a secret that was only known by the emperor and Max, and to no one. The ledgers were supposed to be hidden, invisible to the eyes, as the emperor commanded Max. But it seems as though Max had done a very bad job in hiding the ledgers, because now, had found them. He immediately forwarded them to the emperor, who was shocked, accusing the Max family of charges of embezzlements, labeling them as treasonous traitor to the crown, demanding that their houses and castles be turned upside down and searched. The emperor had no choice. He had sent word to Max, warning him, and now Max knew his fate was imminent, and the day had to come. He told Yeti that he was innocent finally, and had told him the entire truth. Yeti told him that he was going to stay here and fight to the death with his father, but his father refused. Yeti wasn't relenting either, and said he was going to be here to see his father and mother and his entire family. His father then assured him that there was evidence to refute their claims and clear their names, and Yeti should go and get it from his uncle, who has the copy. Yet he was ready to win the case for his family, and embarked on the journey to go to his uncle. The journey took several days, and he finally reached them with haste. He asked his uncle for the ledger, containing the evidence of the Max family's innocence and what would vindicate their name. Uncle Mark scratched his head and began looking for the ledger, but he was taking time to look for it. Yeti suspected his uncle was wandering and asked his uncle if such a ledger even existed. The uncle nodded, and Yeti was shattered. He realized that his father lied to him, and had sent him here to save him from the imminent doom that was about to befall their family. Nevertheless, His family was innocent. He sought to prove their innocence to the world. Yeah, ordered the search, and no evidence was found in the Max castle. Suddenly, when Ye searched himself, evidence was found that the ledger was never there, insisting it was fabricated. But the emperor's justice had to be given to him, and he and his wife were sentenced to death as treasonous traitors. By the time Yeti would return, his entire family was killed on accounts of treason. Even he wasn't exempted. He was a traitor, and was commanded to be killed on sight. The emperor congratulated, yeah, as well as the court for bringing the emperor's justice to the Max family, and he would be celebrated further with his marriage to Yuki. Yeti swore vengeance on everyone and vowed to redeem his family's name with the emperor's blessings. The wedding preparations began in full skill and haste, and the wedding was in full bloom. On the wedding day, the bridegroom was ready, and everyone was waiting for the bride who was nowhere to be seen. They waited, but the wait was endless. Yeah, was scared. He thought Yuki had backed out and didn't want to marry him again. He searched for Yuki in her chambers, and so, wedding skills insinuating that Yuki had vacated the premises. Yeah, was in panic, and a search party was sent out in haste. Everybody was scared of what had happened to Yuki. Across the sea, over to an island, Yuki woke up to see herself still in her wedding dress, but she was in a cage, one that looked like a bird cage. She looked around. She panicked. She cried and screamed for help. Help! Help! Somebody please help me. Is anyone there? She kept crying and shouting endlessly, and suddenly a man approached, well-chiseled physique and long hair. He was fascinating. Yuki was shocked. She had seen this man before. This was the man who she met at the tutoring lessons with her beloved. He was looking at her very uncomfortably at that time. He was drooling over her, and she didn't want to see such a sight ever again. But now she was with him. Even though he was very fascinating and handsome, she didn't want to think about it. It was Yeti with a bass voice, one that was dark and bold. He spoke, "Hello, pretty. How are you doing? You've awoken. What are you doing?" She said to him, "Let me out of here," she begged. "No matter how you scream and wail and cry, no one would come to your rescue. We are in the middle of nowhere. No one knows where we are, on an island. So please, I now beg you, don't waste your voice shouting and screaming, because it will be to no avail," he said to her, as she kept on crying, banging and hitting the cage. "Why are you doing this to me? What have I done wrong that you would treat me this way?" She cried. "Crying wouldn't help you, pretty. Just calm down, and you will know in due time. Do you think you will get away with this? As I speak, I have faith in my Yai, who would come looking for me, and he will not spare you," she said, and Yeti laughed. "I dare him to come. If he checks in the 7 hills, mayhaps he would find you. Don't stay here dreaming of your Prince Charming to get you. Or maybe you can. It would help you, give you hope. You need it. It will at least kill your time, as you might be bored here," he said. At Yuki continued screaming, "Please, I beg you, let me go. Let me go, please." Yet he just looked at her, smoking, and when he was tired, he left the room. Yet he had kidnapped Yuki. He had kept her in his tower on his island, in a cage. No matter what happens, he won't let her go. This would be his card to get to Ye and the others. For days, Yuki cried, waiting for her knight in shining armor to come find her. But she was being delusional as no one arrived. Yet he kept Yuki in that cage and didn't let her out. She was waiting for you to come and rescue her while she remained in that cage. She was tired of wailing and crying. She missed everyone, and she missed him. No one was coming for her. No knight in shining armor was coming to set her free from this bondage. The room she was in was not dark, so by day, she could see from the cage through it to the windows and at the skies. At night, she would sing. She sang so well until she was tired and slept. Unknown to her, this lullaby interested Yeti. He longed to hear them. He could hear them from across his side every night. She would sing, and he would listen. He could feel her pain in the song even, though it was very faint from his room, since it was far. Her voice could reach from the tower when she sang, and it captivated him. He wanted to hear more, so he left his room to move to a room close to her. At night again, she would sing, and he would be moved by her voice, and it would move him to sleep, since he enjoyed hearing her voice. One day, as she sang, he visited her in her own room. When she saw him, she would beg him to let her out, but in his moment in the room, he would not talk to her or utter a word. He would just look at her, waiting for her. Once she was tired of wailing and begging him to let her out, and to no avail, she would continue singing. Now every night he visited her in her room to listen to her sing. Yuki grew tired of begging him, and when he would enter the room, she would continue singing. Soon after, she noticed he often came to hear her sing and was interested in her songs, so she stopped thinking. For some nights, this caught his attention. One night he went to her room to ask her why she was known for singing most, but she told him that if he enjoyed it, to continue singing, he should let her out of the cage. The next day he let her out of the cage, but she couldn't leave her room. She was just well within her room. She had forgotten how to care, so she just continued staying in the room. Anything he wanted, he should do. At night, he would visit her in her room, where she would resume singing, and by day, he would escort her back to her cage after sleeping. This went on until he was finally able to trust her not to enter the cage again. Now she could have a bed in a room, but not leave the room. Yuki told Yeti that she wanted to get to know him better, considering it would help since Yuki is going to be staying here. But Yeti told her that he had nothing for her to know about. Yuki did not understand what he meant. When the night would come, she would sing for him, and he would sleep there as she wrapped him around with blankets and would not leave the room. After some time, Yeti opened the room for Yuki. Now she could move around the tower, but not outside yet. He provided maids for Yuki to be at her disposal. She could chat with them, and they literally kept her company. She spent most of her time with them and would ask them about Yeti. They told her how he was extremely handsome and kind of man of little words. Yuki would not relate to anything that they were saying, except that he was a man of little words. She just knew him as someone who was ruthless and heartless and cared very little about anyone beside him, but that definitely was not their opinion about him. Yuki tried to spend time with Yeti. She would look for him around the tower and would sing so that he would come out. He gradually began to open up to her with the way they talked. The maids could see that Yeti was in love with Yuki, but was trying so much to hide it. Indulged Yuki with this finding, who told them that it couldn't be, and that was not the case. They unnerved to Yuki that Yeti's family was killed not long ago on false charges of treason, and that is why Yeti is just here all alone. He has been labeled a treasure and should be killed on sight. He was literally exiled from the kingdom. Yuki was shaking. She couldn't believe this. She would think that maybe that's why he has become so scornful and evil. But though he has a soft spot which needs to be unnerved, she would now see the reason. He could relate to her songs because they were of pain, and he was going through pain. Yuki hereon now decided to connect with Yeti, feel his inside, reach out to him, and know if she can bond with him. She then began to spend time with Yeti, who now felt very comfortable with her around. After some time, he opened the tower for her and allowed her to roam the island. Now she was free, but she couldn't leave the island. At night, she would go to the sea to have a bath, feel the waters, and early in the morning she realized that it was when Yuki would come out to have a swim or a bath by the sea. He would be naked, and she would patiently wait for those times to see him. His well-chiseled physique, muscular body, and long hair. Never had he been so charming, or anyone else this charming. At these times, she would ogle at him. Even the maids would love to watch and dream of when they could have him, or to themselves. This was the same with Yeti. He would go to the stream to swim and take a bath. She would be so beautiful, like a damsel in distress, her sexy curves and hips adorning her waist, her long hair stretching through her back. He never loved to see more. One night, Yeti was having a bath by the sea, oblivious that he was watching her or the time that he came to her back in the sea naked. He used his hands to trace her back, sending shivers down her spine. His hands moved slowly then landed around her waist as he whispered on her neck. "I want to make you mine," he said, and she let out a light moan. He then kissed her neck, and she closed her eyes. Her world turned and revolved around. She let out a deep breath, but by the time she opened her eyes, he was not there anymore. The following days left her thinking about him and about that encounter. She then continued singing so he will join her. When he entered the room, she was not wearing any clothes. She turned around still singing, moving towards him as he let out a deep breath. She laid his hands on her waist, signaling him to move it wherever he wanted. He once again twisted his fingertips through her sides, from her thighs, up through her tummy and up. She let out a breath, closing her eyes. She slightly opened her mouth. She began to bite her lip, moving the tip through her teeth. Yeti noticed how hungry she was for him, moved to place his lips gently while cupping her breasts. He singled a nipple, twitching it as she lets out a light moan. She moved her hands through his chest, and he kissed her as he moaned. He drew himself to her neck and whispered, "I love you, but I'll wait till you love me too." He then left the room. In the days that went by, Yeti continued to see Yuki's signals all over, insinuating that she is really ready for him. But he gave no thoughts to her. He badly wanted her as twice as much as she did, but did not want to make any advances since he wanted to be sure of her feelings. Yeti and Yuki yet still spent time together and talked, but neither of them made any efforts to talk about what has been going on between them. Yuki also noticed that she was deeply in love with Yeti, and she also didn't try to deny it. From time to time, as they both talked, Yuki would sometimes make efforts to steal kisses from Yeti and then blush. She now loved spending time with him. She would come to his room and he would place his head on her lap while she would sing. Then she rubbed his hair. He loved it so much. It made him very comfortable and excited, and after some time, he would fall asleep. Yeti told Yuki that she had only a year to stay on the island. After that, she was free to go home. He began to open up to her, telling her of the things that had happened in his family, and how he was now labeled a traitor by his friend and her fiancé. One day, Yeti fainted. Since he was sick, Yuki spared no efforts to treat him. When she could have escaped, she was very anxious and scared. For Yeti, she began crying. She spent no efforts to treat him. While he was stabilized, she was with him all the way. When he recovered, the maid spared no efforts to tell him what had happened while he was unconscious. As Yuki went to meet Yeti, she was distraught. She had used these couple of days to contemplate the feelings she had for Yeti, and now she was not going to spare him. She was now sure she loved him. She had fallen in love with him, even though she acknowledged she loved the eye. It was now clear she loved Yeti more. She went straight to his room and gave him no time before he could stand up. "You are extremely cruel. You are wicked. You care for no one but yourself," she said, as he replied inquisitively, "I know not what you mean. You've locked me in this tower, and you told me that after a year I am free to go. You have also shown me your true worth, and you've made me want you. I have stayed inside this castle this hour for days, thinking about you, telling my mind, no, you shouldn't do that. Don't love him. Oh no. Why are you falling in love with him? Why do you want him? All the way I have not had this question answered. Just that my mind keeps revolving around you. Why don't you bathe in the stream every morning? Don't you know that there are many eyes on you? And then, my eyes? I really want you, Yeti. I want to have you. I madly want to make you mine. I have been signaling you these past few days, wanting to give my body to you, wanting you to be all yours. But you've rejected me without reason. Why are you so cool, Yeti? Why do you not want me? Do you need to confirm it from me yet? That I love you? I am madly, deeply in love with you. Yet that I love you so much that I can't think straight. My head is rotating in spirals because of you. See what you've made me become. Why won't you see anything?" She complained, leaving Yeti shocked. What? What about Yai? I thought you loved Yai, he asked. Forget about Yai for now. I am not talking about her. I am talking about you. I want to have a choice for the first time, and I choose you. I want you to have me, hold me, do to me whatever you choose. Never let me go. I want to be all yours. Yeti, all yours, only yours, she expressed. Immediately, Yeti grabbed Yuki into a deep kiss. He had long waited for this moment, and just now Yuki realized it. He made her kneel on his laps as he sat her on the bed, kissing her. His hands traced from her face down to her neck. When he could, he thrilled down to her shirts gently, removing it. She couldn't wait anymore. She was hungry for him for days, and he was thirsty for her as well. They both longed for each other and were finally laying heat off. Yeti whispered as he breathed down Yuki's neck, sending shivers down her spine. I am madly in love with you, Yuki. You are so beautiful. The first day I saw you with her, I thought to myself, I must make her mine now. You're mine, all mine, Yeti said, as Yuki gave a light moan. Oh, I'm yours. I'm all yours. They both removed their clothes as Yeti led Yuki towards the bed. His hands traced down as he cupped her breasts, kissing her nipples gently and lightly. Ah, it sent shivers down Yuki's spine. She shivered, vibrating on the bed as she moaned in ecstasy. She was elated. Yeti continued kissing her as he used his hands to lead his hard rock between her legs. She was full of anticipation, so she willingly spread her legs wide open as he slid his hard rock inside her. They both let out a loud, sharp moan as Yeti rested on her. Moving back and forth in motion, they moaned continuously. Yeti asked, "Do you like it?" "Oh yes. Please don't stop. Please, don't stop," she cried out, as she accompanied him, rocking her legs round his waist, and hands round, and his neck. She took the top position on the ladder, as she was now rocking him. He on the bed, and she on top, as she moved his hips so flexibly on him. She pinned his hands against the bed as he let her take control. At a sudden, they increased their pace, moaning continuously. As Yeti let out a loud gasp, she placed a kiss on his lip before lying down on him. "I love you so much, Yuki. Thank you for being in my life," he chuckled. "I should now thank you for kidnapping me." As Yeti left, she looked at him and met her lips with his. "I love you too," she said. The tower could now bear witness to their love, as they, in day out, were together. While the search party was in adherence, word has met the Sags that there could be a possibility of Yeti holding Yuki in his island. Yai reported this to the emperor and prepared his troops for an invasion. Also, he sent Wat to the island, telling Yeti not to be a coward, and to come out and face him and return his beloved. Yeti sensed that it was high time, and the time to be indicated was fought. He informed Yuki of his departure from the island, and warned her specifically not to leave to be safe, as he was going to come back for her. She didn't want him to go. This was her chance to escape, but for some reason, she wasn't going to. She had begun to love this man who had been wronged, and she would not watch him die. She begged for him not to go, but he insisted. He needed to win his name and her love. He also gathered his truth. They had long evacuated the border, at his command, and now the border was in peril. They were still loyal to him nonetheless, and knew he was innocent. He was their general now, and their commander. Nonetheless, he had more enemies than friends, and was not safe anyway, but could trust his men. He was ready to give his life for them, to clear his name, and mostly for his love. He also loved his men. They assembled at the battlefield at the designated location. Yuki told Yai that there was no need for all this, but Yeti insisted that he was a traitor and should surrender his beloved and face the wrath of justice, which his family had faced. But Yuki said it was not justice, and his beloved was no longer his. Yeti urged that no single soul needed to die here today, and the battle and the fights should just be there, as it has long been from the beginning. Yai agreed. He didn't want to be called a coward in front of all his men, so he took the challenge and began to fight one-on-one comebacks. The fight was gruesome as they exchanged heavy blows. Yeti allowed Yai to have the winning streak for some time until he was exhausted, and then Yeti took the winning streak and began dishing out blows until the Eye conceded and was defeated. He had surrendered the victory for Yeti, and Yeti agreed to spare him. The world was over, and he would win. Yuki should go home and leave him to be with Yuki, who now loves him. But Yai was adamant and would never concede, signaling to his men who launched an attack. Yeti tried to make the defense. Yeti tried to make the Eye call off the battle, but he refused. As Yeti ran behind to call off his men to retreat, Yai launched a bow and arrow from a distance and struck at him, much to Yeti's shock. But it was not Yeti that received the arrow. It was Yuki. Yeti let out a loud cry, begging Yuki to please stay with him as he cradled her on the ground. He cried, begging her not to let go of what he had done and how he shot Yuki. He tried to approach, but Yeti hurriedly took Yuki and called off his men to retreat. Yeti was disturbed that day in tears. He wondered when Yuki emerged from, he cried, taking care of her, bringing attendants who he urged to struggle to save her life. After some days of fighting for survival, she recovered. She recovered after fighting for the survivor of their love. Yuki was in Yeti's camp, so he could not see her, even though he very much wanted to save her from him. Yeti was very much relieved that Yuki had regained consciousness. He, though, scolded her for leaving the island and risking herself, taking a bullet for him. But Yuki said that she couldn't bear the thought of him leaving her, which Yeti objected, also saying he couldn't bear the thought of her leaving him. He also was glad that Yuki was here with him. He hugged her, never wanted to let her go, and she embraced him too. She was so happy to be united with him once again. Nonetheless, he had his woman. He needed to clear his name. Yeti took testaments from several troops in the deployment camps, who were well provided for by the remaining budget allocation. He also discovered that Yai was aware of his innocence, and though framed his family to remove him from the line, from the court, from the council, and as the emperor's favorite, and so that he would seize power with his troops and this testament, and Yuki Everly by his side all the way. He visited the emperor, declaring his innocence and Yai's guilt, that Yai and his family should be punished for false forgery of evidence. Yai, Sayuki, and asked her to come with him. He was so happy to see her and that she had regained consciousness. He told her he was sorry, and he did not mean that the arrow would hit her. He continued telling her of his dreams, how he wished and prayed every day that she would return. He was happy to see her and knows that she would be happy to see him as well. She, on the other hand, did not share his sentiments. He tried very much to convince her to come with him, so that they could get married and live happily ever after. He had hoped that Yeti did not touch her enough, using her as a card to get to him. He was willing to fight for her to the ends of the earth, and he was willing to take any arrows for her, but he needed to be with her and begged her to be with him. Nevertheless, Yuki told Yai that he had lost her, and that she was now with Yeti, and she loves Yeti. She also acknowledges that she loves Yai, but she loves Yeti more, and she had just discovered it. She told Yai of the times she and Yeti spent while they were at the island, and how deeply fond of each other, and how she now longs to be with Yeti. She apologizes to Yai that she can no longer reciprocate his feelings, and she wishes him good fortune in the future. She also has no ill will towards him and wishes he also finds love. This left Yeti very dejected. He could not bear the rejection. The emperor banished Yai and his family and proclaimed Yeti innocent. Yeti pleaded clemency sincerely, but was objected. He also banished all those who had conspired against Yeti, and restored his name and position as chief general. Alas, Yeti and Yuki would be together as they returned to his castle in love with each other.